If you want to take over a market, you got to take lead share first.
Understanding your sales cycle is just as important as understanding your numbers.
The best way to grow a business is don't call them customers, call them neighbors.
Go knock on the door, be like, hey, I'm a competitor. I'm not trying to sell you. Just how did they do?
How do customers buy, depending on your market?
How you get connected with your market is
when you have less appointments and you have your cost of goods sold under control, the customer gets a better experience.
What are your competitors not doing that you can do?
We love referrals as contractors because they close at a higher rate.
The people who are the most angry are the most willing to pay.
We're seeing HVAC companies have labor as low as 6 to 7%.
Welcome to Beers with Contractors.
All right, tradies, welcome to another episode of Beers with Contractors. Nice little rotation. Every 8 to 9 episodes, we have our Q&A episode where we take questions from you guys that we discuss online, some of the Facebook groups I'm a part of, that I've thrown some answers out, but figured, hey, let's just go ahead and bottle it up into some sweet-ass content that can help you guys out there. But before we get going, we have to do one major thing. Is we need to make fun of Terry Kleinfelter because all these academics, they're taking like 3 weeks off around Christmas. They're taking 2 months off in the summer. He is with his family in Florida. So, Terry, we will miss you, but we have a very special OG guest with us. Drake, good to see you, buddy. Glad to have you.
Good to see you.
Yep, Bourbon with Contractors with Drake. Love it. Man, when we get together, it's so much fun. But before we get to the questions and answers today, let me go and give a shout out to some new sponsors. Try not to list everybody because, man, there's a bunch of them. But Jose Elias Rodriguez, thank you. Edmund Hurst, Messiah Barlow, Jerry Nigro 8, Turgut J, Christine Salvi, Michael Humbard, Jake Petro, Matthew J. Quigley, Jeremy Williams, and Steven Self. Thank you for subscribing. And if you are just listening to this show for the first time or have been around a few times, go ahead and give that like, subscribe, and then hit your notifications button for us. We'll try to send you some short-form content that would hopefully help you guys improve your businesses. And then, of course, down in the show notes, you'll find a link to a few different things, but also our store. So if you want to get some Contractors kick-ass gear, and I love it because the traffic for that's been going up, and more importantly, 10% of the portion of the revenue actually goes towards our construction camp for kids. And we are super excited that we can start cutting checks based on all of you guys buying some Contractor kick-ass hats, T-shirts, and hoodies. So I am pumped.
That's gross revenue, not gross margin, not net profit. Gross revenue, guys, that's a lot.
Opening that's the store conversation, Drake, you even called me out. You're like, that's gross revenue, right? And it is. It's not like, Will's going to buy a bunch of beer with it, and then the profits shrink, and then you're going to get 10% of that. No, it will actually
get it
be
off
out
the
of top line revenue. We have built in the margins to make that work. So, but anyway, Drake, are we ready today? Because you even got some questions in here that you can help answer.
Yep, I'm excited, ready to roll.
So I actually answered this on a Facebook group this morning. The first question today came from a guy out of, let me look at my map here. I think he was in Wisconsin. What is the ideal margins for a door company? Well, first off, I don't know what kind of door company it was, if it was a garage door or not. So try to give my best kind of breakdown. Actually, let me first break it down for a foundation concrete company. And then what I've seen around the country with all of our other companies that we work with through our performance payroll software. Let's break down direct costs first, and then we'll go into indirect, and then we'll get into net margins. So typically, you have sales commissions built in, anywhere between 8 to 12%. And then you've got labor, depending on your services, that can be anywhere between 9 and 15%. If you're above 20 and you're in home services, we need to talk. But then we get into materials. Materials in my business, we typically don't want to see anywhere between above 20%. We are currently at 18. And actually, my business, to be more specific, we have 10% commissions, 12% labor, 18% materials. And then we have no subcontracting or miscellaneous costs, with the exception of job site damages, which have a tendency to sneak up on every contractor. But those are essentially our direct costs. A lot of people call them cost of goods sold, right? And then now we get into the indirect expenses. On the indirect expenses, marketing needs to be anywhere between 8 to 10%. If you're smaller, it probably would be higher. If you're much more established in your market, 6, 7% is great. Indirect overhead, if you're getting into indirect overhead, meaning your admin staff, the managers, the owner's salary, over 13%, you're starting to redline that business a little bit. And then, of course, then you get into all of the expenses of benefits, taxes, all of that. So we need to be sure to wrap that up and make sure that at the end of the year, we need to have double-digit net profit, and that would be after taxes and reinvestment in the business. So be sure to look at that. And from a simple breakdown of the profit and loss statement, that's where we would typically see it. And then more importantly, everything I told you is based on accrual accounting. So if you're doing cash accounting, then all of those expenses are going to be a little different based on when you order, how many payroll cycles you have, all that stuff. So to the young man that answered that out of Wisconsin, I hope that answers that question. But Drake, did I miss anything in particular?
Now, was that on the doors? Was that on a door company, or is that just primarily the foundation repair?
Actually, that's a good point. So that would be more for my industry. And it's interesting. I mentioned before that labor in my industry direct labor in the cost of goods sold should be around 12%. We're seeing HVAC companies have labor as low as 6 to 7%.
Whoa.
And so I'm jealous because it's like, wow, that doesn't mean that they're underpaying their employees. It means those employees are incredibly efficient and they're based on performance pay and they're being rewarded for the results of being more efficient. Other companies like foundation companies, not foundation repair like mine, but companies that go out and install and pour new foundations for new homes, they're typically a little heavier in the labor side, typically 20%, but they don't have as much of the sales commission or sales pay that comes out of that. So it's a kind of an interesting blend. I think that's why we see companies like garage doors and HVAC companies have great labor rates because their install teams are their sales teams blended into one. And that's why we're seeing, 12 to 14 times multiples for businesses in garage doors, HVAC, plumbing, electrical, just because, man, they can find a problem, fix the problem, sell, and then invoice all in one go. And the companies that are doing that, man, they are just killing it in the market. I'm really proud of the fact that those tradespeople have come into the world and elevated the game for what it is to be a contractor. It's pretty awesome. So, by the way, what was the breakdown in the kind of the low voltage security Wi-Fi, internet world, Drake? Because I know you dabbled in all sorts of things.
It was, I'm not going to remember all of my numbers. Honestly, I don't remember because by the time I was done with it, I spent the last several months just working on the gross revenue because that was the way that the businesses that get sold are valued in that industry. So it was a grow at all costs, and we were growing about 3% a week. And so we were growing kind of like a rocket ship. So I kind of didn't care because I knew that I was adding a lot of money to my pocket just by pumping the sales. Because an internet service provider, we have like a 7-month break even was our break even cost. And so we were underwater for the first 7 months of the service because we couldn't charge. Yeah, we couldn't charge to get anything that you do to charge an installation fee. Anybody who's making the decision to get an internet provider they're thinking, how much does it cost me to get started? So our benefit was lower the cost to get started and then keep them.
Yeah, you guys were aiming for that lifetime value of customer, right?
Everything was about lifetime value. And so managing, it kind of changes the way that you manage cash, right? 'Cause you have to pay to install the equipment, you have to pay for all the equipment, and your inventory churn and management becomes a big deal. And so it was a little bit of a different ballgame there. But once you paid off your equipment, you were very profitable.
Yeah. Yeah, man, that's just wild how companies, certain ones, they're designed to be under losing money in the first 7 to call it year of an account value. That's why I do like to live in the world where it's like, no, we get a customer, we sell the customer, we do the job, and then off to the next and rinse and repeat. But I don't have the LTV or lifetime value of customer that folks like that have. So it's kind of, two sides of the same coin. So. But I did like this next question because I noticed that this individual was actually in a market that I used to work in and have a business in. and he's competing against some major big private equity players. What are some ways a small company can increase market share? This is interesting because in the home services space, we're all dealing with these big companies. And number one, it's kind of like the David and Goliath story. Small companies need to understand and recognize that they are the David of the Goliaths in these stories because they can play a game way better than the big guys. And specifically, and we're going to get into some of this on the lead stuff, but, the big guys are not thinking about clear messaging and branding. Just like we had Dan Antonelli on a few episodes ago. Man, what a great just advocate for clear branding and messaging. He mentioned about being 5-mile famous in your market first before growing into multiple markets. And that was just music to my ears to hear that because it's like, yeah, the big companies are going to spend all this money on marketing and not get as much of an impact to their customers, even though we know now 80% of customers don't know who you are, even if you're a big guy or a little guy, when they're looking for your services. It just doesn't exist. So getting into that 5-mile famous attitude for your company as a small business is really important. When you start to compound that with things like just being really good at the basics, yard signs, door hangers. We still do street festivals in local boutique neighborhoods where they have a summer festival, and they're not expecting to see a company like ours out here. But guess who else is not there? The competitors. They're not there. And then we still get leads from those. By the way, most of them are like $50 to $100. They're just glad to have people setting up a canopy and showing up to be a part of the street festival. But also, like Ty McBride, he was one of our earlier guests. He says, the best way to grow a business is don't call them customers, call them neighbors. Treat them like neighbors, right? And then also on that note, we're going to get into this in leads. So I'm going to probably duplicate some messaging here, but there are so many low-hanging awards out there that you can grab for free. Like Chamber of Commerce, all these local organizations and newspapers are doing these annualized awards, and they're literally just giving them away if you just apply for them. And it's not like you're writing a freaking grant here. It's just an award for like the best local company in this category in this market. And a lot of those companies are trying to do that so they can sell you marketing products, right? Well, just tell them no to the marketing products. But when customers see those credibility awards come through, and a lot of the big companies just don't have the time to deal with them, you can start to seep into the market and steal what I consider lead share first. And if you want to take over a market, you got to take lead share first. Then you can take market share second, because there's only a limited amount of leads in your specific service in a given market. It's limited. Next year, it'll be a different number. But, if you can get more of that pool, then naturally what's going to happen is you're going to get more market share. And Drake, have you ever seen this movie, There Will Be Blood, the oil movie with Daniel Day-Lewis?
No, I haven't seen that yet, but I've seen like TikTok clips of it, and it looked. Yeah. I was like, "Ooh, I need to see that."
Oh, it's a kind of a dreary movie.
Yeah.
But there's a great scene in that movie where the oil baron, played by Daniel Day-Lewis, he tries to have a conversation with one of the characters, and the character's trying to get him to buy his land so he can have the mineral rights for the land. And he essentially says, listen, I don't need your land. I can literally drill out underneath your land and pull the oil out right underneath you. And then continues to beat the snot out of the guy. I mean, it's a violent scene, but the lesson there is you can literally steal lead share from the big guys in your market by exploring low-cost lead alternatives that they are not exploring, just like we've discussed. And it's a grind, but man, when you start chipping away, next thing you know, that big slab of marble is a beautiful sculpture called your business after a while, and it's awesome. So moving on, question number 3.
I had a little bit on that one too, because I think that was really big for me because I had to compete with a lot of big guys.
Oh, yeah. I forgot you were in a competitive market.
Yeah, so when you're an internet service provider, the major players are playing with billions of dollars. So I think by the end of it, I was competing with Suddenlink, which did $2 billion a year, AT&T, which several hundreds of millions a year, and then T-Mobile, who's another multi-billion-dollar a year company, right? So we're all competing over internet, and I'm the local guy, right?
Yeah.
But I think what you specifically said about David and Goliath is super important here, because David didn't go out to Goliath with a sword. Saul initially tried to put him in armor, and he was like, this isn't going to work for me. I'm not going to go against a giant with armor. So it's important to know you're not going to grow the way that they are, right?
Yeah.
Because what do they have the most of? They have tons of capital, and they're just going to dump a bunch of money into the normal marketing places, right? Because those owners are disconnected from their market. How you get connected with your market is making sure that you mention your branding, right? How do they remember you? How do the people remember you? When we were doing internet service and we were starting, we went door to door and we just asked people, hey, or if you're a contractor, go look and see if there's a yard sign of one of your competitors. Just go knock on the door, be like, hey, I'm a competitor. I'm not trying to sell you. Just how did they do? Like, tell me, what'd you think? What'd you like? What'd you not like? So you can understand, because these big companies, they have things that they're not good at, and that's your key entry, right? So with mine, it was hold times, right? These internet service providers,
Oh, yeah.
everybody has a super long hold time, or when they talk to somebody, the person, they can't speak English or they don't know what to do. So we made it to where we first call, it was within, the first couple rings, right? So they knew that they were going to call and they would immediately get the problem fixed. If there was a problem we couldn't fix on the phone, it was fixed within 24 hours. And we told people that. That was something that our competitors weren't doing. What are your competitors not doing that you can do? And make sure that you hone in on that identity. And that will get you leads, because you'll be focusing on the people who are the most angry. And the people who are the most angry are the most willing to pay whatever just to stick it to the other guy.
Yeah. And it's wild, like, because customers, we think that they just are in the Amazon state of mind as contractors. Like, we just want to click a button, order it, and it's done. But no, when you're in their home, they want that high touch. And it's wild. If you just ask them, they'll tell you. And you mentioned something very important. You knock on the door and be like, I'm not trying to sell you. I am a competitor. I just want to know what went well, what didn't. I mean, that right there, 90% of folks are scared to death to do. But the information you probably got back from that was massive.
All you're doing is giving them a license to complain. And what do the people like to do? They'll tell you everything. It's like, I just want to hear your complaints. I'm trying to figure out how to fix the market, how to do better. What did they do bad? And you're just giving them a license to complain to you.
Oh, that's funny.
It'll be the best part of their day.
I know. Can I record this conversation? Is that okay?
Yeah.
That's cool.
But then when you go back to your marketing and your messaging, and your messaging is specifically focused on what they would complain about.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And so you talk about, like, hey, are you tired of X thing that happened when you did this with us competitor? There you go.
Yeah.
Now you're able to actually speak to the issue that other people are having, because the things that they experienced are the things that the people who haven't bought from you are afraid of happening.
Yeah. Well, that's a cool story, and I'm glad that you have that example, Drake, because I always tend to forget just how competitive of a world you were in, and especially in a very enclosed market.
Yeah, there were 7 ISPs.
So Drake is not only a great producer, but he's a guy that has been the grinder out there in the middle of nowhere markets, trying to make it work, climbing up 600-foot poles without harnesses. You're just an adrenaline junkie, Drake. I know that's what it is. So cool. Let's see here. I actually loved this question. Came from somebody in one of my foundation repair Facebook groups. What do your customers' employees see when they walk into your office looking for ideas to improve our office? And I know that seems probably superficial, but I believe in not just employee or customer facing issues. Like, people are going to experience something that they can't describe when they walk into your place. So for example, my office, when you walk in, there is a receptionist desk, which is funny. We don't even have a receptionist. It just has that vibe to it. So it's like, well, I guess. And by the way, I went to Facebook and bought this receptionist desk for like $300 from a dentist office that shut down. And now that just puts all of our awards, our glorified trophy case. And by the way, there's comfy chairs there because if somebody's waiting. and I know people are going to hate me for saying this. Even if it's a solicitor, they are going to speak about the experience they had at your company to someone in the market. So, we've got our awards, we've got comfy chairs, we have a television that rotates. We use Google Slide of all of our team members. So you see a picture and it rotates, and it's free on G Suites to just throw it up there, and you publish it to the web. You hit rotate every 3 seconds. So as someone's sitting there, what they're seeing is our team, and everybody's smiling and happy, and they see the awards. They're comfortable. And then, by the way, I know this sounds weird. We actually have our call center. If somebody comes in the door and is waiting, they literally will bring a water to them and be like, hey, would you like a water or a cup of coffee? And then if they say no, they just leave the water on the table just in case they were being polite. And that alone has been amazing on 2 occasions. Number one, when we have people coming in to apply for a job, it sets a totally different standard. And by the way, you don't have to have some big fancy office for this. Just tidy it up and be intentional about your presentation. So much so that when we interview people, we have told folks that we're not going to give them the job. They left and then talked to one of their friends. Their friends came in and applied for a job with us because they said about what a great experience they had with us. So now we're getting walk-in referrals for new people wanting to work for us. So be very intentional. And I know it's really tough. It's kind of like, man, we're in the construction business. I mean, it's a dirty job, but people are connected to their surroundings. And I think it's really important for workplace health. I think it's really just good for mental health to be around an environment that you enjoy being in. And if you look around your office and you are seeing like this place is a shithole, then, well, guess what everybody else thinks?
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by Performance, the bonus system designed to increase profits for your construction company. Performance incentivizes your production team for more efficient installs and rewards them when they beat your preset labor goals. So no more milking the clock and no more unnecessary gas station trips. Performance drives your team to work harder and smarter. Every construction company on Performance has seen a 7% decrease in direct labor costs or more. Click the link in the description or visit performance.co to schedule your demo today. That's PER, the number 4, MANCE.co. Reward your team, retain your team, grow your profits. Performance.
So here's the second one is customers. I have had customers come in livid and upset, ready to argue with me. And knowing that they arrived early and then had a moment to sit in our environment for a little bit and see, oh, this isn't such a bad place, it naturally will de-escalate a customer. If they're angry, it will also escalate a customer that is undecided about your products or services. So I love this question. And if you do not have some type of television or even rotating photo frame, hell, I've been in businesses, I love it. They're all about family values. So when they walk in, like it's pictures of their family. Everybody's smiling. And you naturally just want to smile. It doesn't even have to be awards. It could just be like special occasions that are creating a mindset around what your brain should think and feel when you're in that environment. And I love it. I think the psychology of it is insane, and it's one of my new favorite topics. So, and Drake, you've been in some of these places, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think another way to frame it that's important to think about is you're likely going to be in this person's home. And so when they walk in and they see, how do you keep your own home? And obviously it's not your home, but it's your office, right? How do they keep your own place? If you're able to present, hey, we care about how presentation looks, we are tidy, we are comfortable, and we are hospitable by bringing you water and caring about your experience, then we're going to care about your experience when it's other things, like how we deal with you as a customer. And that, I think, is that really separates the people that are paying attention from the other people, right? And it doesn't cost much. Like, look, think about it. I can go get a 50-inch TV from Walmart for $250. I can get the stand for maybe another 100 that sits on the floor and shows everything. I can get a USB for, $20 and upload photos on it. And most of them have USB slots now. It's not hard. And so those little touches, it just gives them a different experience. And like you said, you're just putting them in a different mindset. hey, this is a family business. So when I'm talking to somebody, their family business is at stake too. They care about being hospitable. Like it's just, you're just pre-programming these things. And these are the subtle things that hit our subconscious. But I doubt any of your customers could articulate it unless they care about those things too, but they will sense it and it will change the way they interact with you.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I hate to say it, like the smell of the building when you walk in. Like I walk, not the literal sense of smell, but you just get it right away, right? Like this is a pretty cool place.
So no lockers at the front.
Yeah. But I mean, we have done that with every individual location in our office. We're very intentional about it. And I hate to say feng shui, but let's just call it what
It's
it
real.
is. It is. And I think we need to, as contractors, first off, ixnay with is it good for our customers or employees? They're one and the same. And because the employees and candidates that you're trying to hire are going to go out in the community and talk about what it was like coming to your facility, and then that's going to come back around. And actually, this helps with some of our other questions about lead flow that's coming up. So, by the way, I love that this contractor was even thinking about this. It's a super huge thing that I just don't think we did for a long time. It's just like, well, here's a metal building. You go smoke over there, and if you got to take a leak, go over there behind that barrel. And
And I'm surprised why nobody wants to work here.
yeah. And by the way, when I say that, that was actually one of my old businesses years and years ago. And that's what you did. But yeah, well, moving on. What are some cheap or free marketing ideas that can help boost leads? Leads have been a big issue this last year. We've heard a lot of folks saying that, Q4, everybody had a good uptick in the home services business, which is great. But, I'm going to go back to something I said before, free/cheap. And I actually added something here that reminded me, but get out there and just Google search in your market, construction, home improvement, award application, and just Google it and go down and just try to find as many awards that you can get in. Drake, have you ever heard of the background behind like Barefoot Wine and how it came to be?
No.
Yeah, so the married couple that ended up acquiring Barefoot Wine did not intend to be in the wine business. They were in the inventory management and supply chain, and there was a stacking amount of accounts payable building up. So they ended up buying out all the debt and then taking over the company. Well, they didn't think about getting into the wine business, but now that here they are, they're in it. So they went through and they learned a lot about kind of like who is our real customer. Their real customer was not the people buying the wine. It was all these division salespeople. But one of the big things is after going through that, they didn't have any money to market. So what they did is they started attending charitable events for free, volunteering, saying, hey, we would love to help you in this fundraiser and event, volunteer, and in exchange, if we could, just be able to talk to a few folks about our products and maybe have a few minutes to speak, because they couldn't afford to market. And we use this at my company, Vesta, where we would volunteer in efforts and wearing our shirts. And we weren't expecting anything in return, but we were out there in the community. We were getting engaged with people, and we made sure to be intentional, like wearing a shirt that had our brand and what we did. By doing that, that creates this kind of grassroots community involvement where it's like, oh, yeah, you don't work with that company? Here you go. It is interesting, though, a side topic to that. In their story, there was an event where they actually were serving some of their wine. And I loved the family's outlook. They were like, have you had your brick today? And that's just how business is. Like, did you get hit in the head with a brick? Because some days, man, it feels like it. So they were at this charity event. They were serving wine for free and volunteering. And I guess they didn't pull a permit to deliver or serve said wine. They got a $10,000 fine a month later on this charity event. So that was their brick for the day. And I think we've all been there was like, yeah, well, we didn't mark the utilities, so let's just go out there and just be real careful. Then you hit the gas line that shuts down the school for a few days while it's in session. By the way, ask me how I know. I've been in those situations, but no, I love that, because if you can apply to those awards, get involved in charities, they want the recognition to give back. but they also need the help. Super helpful. But also, you do need to think about this. And Drake, you brought up a good point, is like, how do customers buy depending on your market? Are they an urgent, fast sales cycle, or are they going to be able to take the time to compare and things like that? We learned that from Dan, that large majority of customers don't know who you are until they need your services. And, when we look at that, I have found free/cheap marketing ideas, door-to-door, even door hangers, if you're not brave enough to like knock on a door. Those are very easy ways. We did a case study last year where we hit one neighborhood. The neighborhood had 890 homes saying, can we seal the cracks in your driveway? Here's a rough estimate on what it would cost. It's about X dollars a foot. Call us before it becomes a problem because this may prevent it. And what do you know? 10% of the 800 homes called us back. And that was literally me and my wife walking around the neighborhood because I got tired of seeing all these driveways that could be serviced. They just don't need us yet. So, and hey, I didn't lose any weight, Drake, but that's because I'm filling up my calories hanging out with you. But
Well, it's like you said, we did the same thing when we were trying to validate whether we were going to start an internet service provider. We went and targeted a specific neighborhood. The neighborhood had homes that we knew that we would like to serve, and they fit our target demographic. And so we went door to door, and we just found people and asked questions. And, door hangers are also something that we did, and it worked.
yeah, man, it works. We got away from it post-COVID about door hangers. It was like, no, we can just get our leads off the internet. And then we all know what happened after the COVID burst, and then whoop, all back down. But yeah, here we are. And I was like, oh shit, you know what? Damn, did you know asking for referrals and putting out door hangers and yard signs actually work?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like, this is our V8 moment,
We had two sets of door hangers. We had one that was just for cold outreach, but then as soon as they installed, we said, hey, we just installed your neighbor. How's your internet service, right? Because it's like, hey, someone else trusts us, right? So it's the social proof. Someone else trusts us. You can trust us too. And that's a big thing too. That's why the referrals sell so well, and why referrals work is because you're borrowing somebody else's trust when you're going and actually talking to them. So if you go and you install and do work with somebody, have your guys just go put door hangers on like the next 5 houses or the next 10 houses or whatever.
Yeah, we call that kind of what's it called? Surround the house is what we call that, where it's like, hey, we're doing work at this house. Let's just left, right, and then the back 3. And it's crazy to think, like, somebody told me this years ago, and it never really clicked, but after finally growing a few endeavors, it started to hit with me. We love referrals as contractors. We love them because they close at a higher rate. But a yard sign in a neighborhood is considered a silent referral. A silent referral meaning, hey, this person chose this company. They must be reputable. And then if you can get 2 yard signs, that is just as good and will close at a nearly double the rate of a normal lead from the internet or whatever. Sorry, belching into the mic today, Trey, but those will close at a higher rate because they are considered referrals, even though they came from a yard sign. And hell, we have yard signs by the pallet now. Man, so powerful. So yeah, if you're competing in those competitive markets, you're small, you're looking for cheap lead sources, sometimes you got to get out the walking shoes and get to work. But man, it's great. I love it. And I think it'll be a big part of our company, even if we ever get to 50 million a year. I mean, it'll have to be just part of our SOPs. But so this is an interesting one. Are we on number 5, Drake?
Yeah.
Wanting to add? So this guy said, hey, I'm wanting to add some additional services in 2025. Should I brand it different or keep it under the same name? For reference, he is an electrical contractor adding plumbing. So I'm a big believer in keeping everything under one brand as long as the brand is clear. Obviously, if I'm in foundation repair and want to get into satellite dishes, that doesn't make a lot of sense because maybe it does because it's like, well, if they have foundation repair, maybe we could sell them satellite services, right? But we need to rewind a little bit and say, what can make us money, but also what makes it stupid, simple, clear for the customer to buy from us. And I do believe we're in this age where now people, And Drake, keep me honest here. In this example, I have a feeling like a lot of folks are viewing electrical, HVAC, plumbing really as a suite of products that can be offered by a lot of companies.
I think when people think of home services, I could see how they are doing it. Once again, it comes back to what's the decision process when they're buying, right? What's the decision process? Are they going, oh, I need, this switch keeps shorting out, and so I need to go in and change it? Or are they thinking this company, because they do so many things, they're talented and good at this, right?
Yeah.
If Jolly Goat Garage Doors decided to add plumbing, well, that would require some changes in the branding. It would be Jolly Goat Services or Jolly Goat Home Repair or something like that, right? And so that's where it comes back to, what is your image? What's the image that the customer or your lead has in their head? And the closer you can match the image that they have in their head, the better you're going to do when you're acquiring customers. The more throughput they have, the more they're going to think, oh, this person knows what they're doing.
Yeah. Well, if in this case, as the electrical contractor, I would say, back to your comment, Drake, about like what is in the customer's head, right?
Mm-hmm.
If it's Mr. Sparky, the franchise, you're not typically thinking about plumbing, right?
Hold my water as far away from electrical
Mr.
as possible.
Sparky Plumbing. It's like, wait a minute.
We might die.
Yeah. Don't be peeing in that bowl when the spark ignites, right? Oh man, but yeah, so it's like one and the same. But I have seen it work very well to where, even a local market where you can create an umbrella of business units around, services. So we've explored this where we do concrete lifting, but we don't do concrete replacement, right? So we have decided that will be a separate business unit that will be complementary to what we have, but has a separate brand, because also it services a whole other list of customers out there that we don't apply for the main business. Yeah. So like that business would address new home builders, all sorts of like flat work stuff. And my business just doesn't do that. So we've said, all right, cool. We can actually help absorb more of the market capacity to do that. But I should actually, this brings up a good point, because I love this concept of, do I diversify or do I distract myself? And honestly, if you've got a core focus in service that you know there's market share value, don't go piling on other services to try to absorb more, when the fact is if you just focus on that one or two set of services, you could scale it really well. And when you reach the market cap on it, and meaning you're the big name in the game, then start to look at diversifying. And we get so caught up in the speed of business of grow, when it's like, no, just focus on that, master it, then move on to the next.
Yeah, and I have several, like you're spot on there, because we're going to keep coming back to this, is what is the customer thinking, right? So if I'm electrical services, I'm an electrical contractor, I'm looking at plumbing, well, do you service individual homes and that's how you get most of your work? Or do you service home builders and you build a whole bunch of brand new construction? Because your customer is very different there. If you're building a whole bunch of new homes and you add a plumbing service to all the new construction that you're doing, well, then you have the same customer and all you're doing is increasing your average ticket value to that one customer. But if you're selling to an individual, then that individual, now you have to think about, okay, I have people that may have electrical questions that are calling my business. Okay, now if I'm going to add plumbing questions that they're going to call and add to my business, am I buying a business that's existing, or am I going to train all of my people on how to answer electrical questions and plumbing questions? And so this is where your customer profile really matters, because if you're doing new construction homes, then you're just adding another service. But if you're doing to individuals, you're almost building a whole new business. And so does it make sense to add plumbing if you're an electrical contractor who services individuals? Or does it make sense to try and take your electrical service and wire more brand new homes and go talk to builders where you can be doing similar things, but just to a different customer set? And so it's really, when we're thinking about adding revenue streams, we have to be thinking about where's the revenue stream coming from and what's the load it's going to put on the business in order to actually add that and do it well so that we can get more business.
Yeah. What you just mentioned, Drake, is just that mindset that needs to happen first. Because let's just address the elephant in the room. We all get slow in business, and we go through the panic of as contractors, where it's like, holy shit, I'm out of work, I'm out of leads. So now I need to add this service to get more leads, when a lot of the time it was because we didn't do a lot of stuff in the back end, right? So I love that you mentioned that, because I have been there. It is a real stigma with contractors. When things get slow, we start to stretch ourselves thin into different services to try to increase revenue without thinking of the long-term targets. And we mentioned before, with companies that are getting these 12, 14, 16 times multiples of EBITDA, they're the ones that have focused laser tight for 10 plus years, and man, they're killing it. And I'm glad they are. I think it's cool. We're seeing this new age of entrepreneurial contractors that are just killing it in the world. So,
Yeah. Do you think they got to those HVAC contractors got to 6% direct labor because they were just doing a whole bunch of different things?
yeah,
Ooh,
yeah. They're like, all right, we're doing siding, boys.
Yeah.
We're going through a lukewarm season. Can you imagine a bunch of, and I say this with a great deal of respect, Brandon Springer from United Mechanical was on our show a while ago. He's an HVAC guy. A lot of the comments were making fun of him for being a tin basher. These guys that just bang metal all day and hang ducting. Hey, they're not that smart, you know. Could you imagine a bunch of HVAC mechanical guys all of a sudden like, all right, well, we're doing siding today.
Yep, exactly.
But we've been there because I've ran out of cash out of short lead flow, and typically it's not the market; it's the poor planning on the marketing and sales. So,
The 5 Mile famous.
Yep, 5 Mile famous. I'm so excited. I should mention, if you haven't listened to our episode with Dan Antonelli or read his book, please go read it. It was a great episode, but I admire his wisdom on it. And we're changing things in our company. So, hey, I'm going to skip the inventory question number 6, which is, what are you using to track inventory? And just to be clear, we use a lot of stuff and a lot of spreadsheets. And honestly, we still have pitch counters when we're walking around. And if you don't want to know what a pitch counter is, it's what baseball coaches use to click, click, click to count pitches. But we will walk around and count on a clipboard, and we upload it into Hilti On Track and spreadsheets. I think the big question here is just track inventory even on a clipboard and a piece of paper first, and get really good at it. Once you get good at that, then look at upgrading into some inventory management systems. A lot of CRM systems do it. So,
yeah, there's a lot of variables there. Like, what kind of inventory are you tracking? What's the size of the inventory? What's the weight of the inventory? There's a million ways to skin that cat.
yeah, well, gosh, it makes it sound like I don't like the question, but inventory is so important, specifically for the fact that a lot of people make profit, but they don't know where all the cash went. And typically it's held up in inventory, or they said, hey, I can buy all this product at a discount, and then I can reduce my cost of goods sold, which then it would increase my, gross profit margin. But then they're not taking into account the loss on the cash cycle. Yep. And that's just so important. And sorry to jumble a bunch of fancy words about cash cycle margins, but you know, Drake, you've been there. Fuck, I've been there.
Yeah, well, it's like, so internet service provider, right? We want as little cost to get started as possible. So we don't charge install fees, and we pay stuff monthly. So I had a 7-month break even. I had to keep a customer for 7 months. Well, guess what? I had to upfront all the charges to install everything, to have the inventory. And so cash management was a big deal. So I get the cash flow constraints where that can be difficult. But yeah, it's, if you buy too much, then you can grow your way right out of business.
Oh, God. Yeah.
We were growing at like 2 to 3% a week when I sold. And just the cash, like, yeah, we were.
Holy smokes.
We were growing real fast. And so I got a great multiple.
Oh, yeah, I bet you did. That's funny. We said we were going to go through that question, then we spent a few minutes going through it anyway. So if we're one thing, we're at least deliberate about getting down the numeric values of this. So I love this next one. What is the max amount of appointments you set for sales reps or technicians in a day? All right. And this just blows my mind sometimes. So I'm going to answer for me and why, and then what I hear in the market. So in my business, I have dedicated sales reps. My sales reps, I try my best not to give them any more than 2 appointments a day. And I know a lot of people say, whoa, 2 appointments. Well, what I have found is, and there's a very great metric to start measuring in your business, is either average dollar per appointment or average dollar per lead. So if you give all of your reps 10 appointments, who brought back the most out of those 10 appointments? You take the 10 appointments divided by total revenue sold, and then you divide it up. It'll give you average dollar per lead or average dollar per appointment. And I have found when you give a rep over 12 appointments a week, their average dollar per appointment goes down by nearly 30%. So I want you to think about that. Every appointment that you see, you're getting 30% less if you're giving them that many appointments. It's crazy. So to any of those out there that think I'm crazy for doing this, let me just break it down. We don't email estimates. We try to deliver on site. So we're not doing the measurements, meeting with the customer, and then going back to the office and mailing it off. So we're trying to complete the sales cycle while we're at the house. So you see this in HVAC where typically 4 to 6 appointments, depending on weather, can typically you see a drop off. And I'm not an HVAC tech, but we work with a lot of HVAC techs. And during the heat of the summer, you start to give them more than 6 a day, they start to see a fall off in their average ticket because they're not taking the time to work with the customer. They're not listening. They're trying to get to the next one, and then off they go. And then also, not to mention, when you have less appointments and you have your cost of goods sold under control, the customer gets a better experience. It's not like we will be at your house between 8 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. that day. Will you be home? Yes. I guess I'll be home. Who the hell? Well, I don't know.
Yeah.
Virtual workers maybe made that better. But no, nobody wants to sit around waiting for Jim Bob being like, where the hell is this plumber? That also helps, by the way, not only with your average dollar per appointment, but it also helps with your call center and appointment setting because they know a predefined set of timetables that we're booking on. And it makes it so much easier. And then also when you have a lead flow, it helps you with recruiting because it says, hey, we need to hire more people or not based on blocking. Meaning, for example, me, if we know we're going to increase lead flow and it's going to go to 30 to 40 new appointments a month, then I need to hire another salesperson. So then I can already build that into my budget. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking quantum mechanics here, but it's just so helpful. Please, please, please start tracking your average dollar per appointment or average dollar per lead, and it will tell you the sweet spot about, hey, what is too many appointments for a person to handle? So, oh, and I got a bonus, Drake. We appointment allocate with our customers. So when a customer calls, we actually will see who has the higher average dollar per appointment. And those reps typically are the ones that get the first pick and get more appointments first because it can typically double our revenue just by that one action, by being more intentional about it. So, sorry, Drake, what were you going to say?
So you're making them a little bit hungry,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So everybody's a little bit hungrier to get. Yeah.
Yeah. We're very clear about that. And it's like, hey, guys and gals, if you're at a certain point, you're just going to get less leads than at this point. So the way you get more appointments is train better. Work on these things, right? Go work with the crews for a little while. And that sounds bad, but man, our people love it. It's kind
real.
of in our culture. So.
Well, and I think so the next part of this for anybody that's listening, I think, is knowing like what kind of system do you have, right? So Will's system is great. He has it honed in, dialed in. Can your technicians, right? So if we're talking about technicians, can your technicians upsell, right? Is there much upsell opportunity? With my internet service, there was very little upsell. And so I'm trying to make sure that they are getting as many installs as they can during a day without degrading the customer experience, without having one small thing throw the whole day out of whack. And so I think it's important to know, like, okay, so are your salespeople also your estimators? Are your sales and estimators also your technicians, right? And so you have to think about what is actually being done with the time that's allotted.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big part of it is if your technicians are there to just, their whole job is to be as efficient as possible while giving the customer a good experience, then yeah, you're going to do that differently than if you're trying to upsell somebody and you're trying to increase the average ticket value. And you want to make sure that you're there, you're talking to the customer, you're explaining, hey, here's what's going on right now. Here's some extra things that are going to make this last a whole lot longer. And this is what's going to give you a better bang for your buck so that you don't ever have to see this come back again. And so I think that understanding your sales cycle is just as important as understanding your numbers. And Will, obviously, because Will does so much with sales, he knows both of those intimately.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I was there years ago. I'm like, no, we're supposed to run 5 appointments a day. And then that customer would give me that, well, I got to think about it. And I don't know if that's right for me. And then be like, all right, well,
bye.
I'll follow up you later. I got 17 other people I got to meet with. Bye. And then,
Exactly.
And by the way, I do believe like if you give a sales rep the opportunity to handle objection versus go to the next one, they will always go to the next one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, and that sounds really bad because I train salespeople. I've worked in every department in my company, but I really love my sales department because there's just, man, it's hard work, right? Especially in the licensed trades, the plumbing, electrical, and HVAC world. You know, you have to have first the technical knowledge, then you have to have the people skills, then you have to get really good at sales. And a lot of it is not fancy lingo and twisting arms. It's actually understanding and taking the time to speak with another human being and work through the questions that they have. And I think that's the biggest thing in home services that we can improve on is trying to help the interpersonal communication skills of our field employees that know how to do the work, but now they need to be good at the interpersonal communication skills with the customers. And that's really tough. And the customers don't make it easier either, but if you give them the time to do that, they will get better at it, and it makes a world of difference. Man, all right, let me get off my soapbox here, Drake. We're going to jump down. I'm looking at our other questions here because we're coming up on our hour. So let me see here. You got one you'd prefer to run through on these last 3 just for time restraints?
Let's see. I think that we should go with, I think number 8, what kind of bonus structure do you recommend for field supervisor or manager? And I think that aligning incentives is such a big deal. And I think that you're going to be able to speak to this one really well. So let's go with that one.
Yeah, and it's kind of random. This was not from a Facebook group or one of our forums. This actually has come from a lot of my customers on the performance payroll side, which is interesting because that whole concept and purpose of our performance software is more front-end, field-oriented, and our purpose is to be very crystal clear that the employee knows exactly what they're making. Meaning, if I hit this target, I can make this, right? So that typically is tied to the direct expenses of the sale. But managers and field supervisors are not. They control a lot of different costs outside of that. So I'm going to water this down really clear on how I recommend if you have a home service business, what typically a field supervisor or a production manager should be paid. So they should have a base salary, and then 15 to 20% of their income above their salary should be based on a few different metrics. Let's go over a small company first. Small company. They need to be rewarded and incentivized over dollars over break even, meaning, hey, we need to make sure we're exceeding our costs, including indirect overhead, gross profit margin, and then online reviews or net promoter score, meaning are we making a good splash in the market, creating happy customers? If you're a smaller company, that's really important, and that kind of goes back to what you can do to compete against the big guys, is honestly just provide good services and keep doing it over and over and over again. The bigger you get, the harder it is to control those QA, QC moments. So now let's fast forward into maybe a home service company that's a little bit larger. So got a field production manager. They get a base salary of, say, $80,000. Well, 15% of that $80,000 is going to be tied into gross profit margin, dollars over break even, and then net profit, meaning we do not win until we can facilitate all the indirect stuff. And this is why I like that, because a production manager can essentially reduce indirect overhead by increasing output. So if I'm spending $100 on marketing, and then of course I am installing $100 in product, well, my costs are not going to balance, right? But it's like, oh, cool. So I just need to install $500 worth of product. And then now that marketing expense goes down by percentage. So they have control over indirect overhead that they don't realize. And we've talked about this, and sorry to beat a dead horse here, Drake, but
This is important.
I want to make sure that when you start training your managers on these three, they can make 15% above what they make, but they will get very crystal clear on the costs of the company and run it like it's their own. So, for example, I can walk up to any of my managers, this is my dead horse moment, and I can say, what is our break even? And they can take the gross profit margin divided by the fixed costs and spit out a number to me within 15 seconds, because they know how much control they have in the company. And I have been there and I've done it. I see it in a lot of businesses and I understand the hierarchy of it. A lot of times field supervisors or production managers are really good installers that have just been around a long time. And so they get a bigger title, they get the company car and their cushy salary, but they have no understanding about the costs of the businesses or how to influence it. And I can't remember. It may have been, gosh, did we do our episode 52 as like our 1 year episode? Because it's kind of a recap of what I learned.
Yeah, I think it was 52.
Yeah, so it just blows my mind. Like, my brother runs our production department, and I've said this before in our podcast, but I love talking about this. My brother knows how to control the throttle of our production department so well that when he needs to decide to increase installs or decrease, he doesn't look at the gross profit margin, things like that. He keeps an eye on it, but he actually goes to our call center and looks at future sales appointments. And he can go ahead and rework and say, okay, based on the future sales appointments, I know how many he's going to cancel, but how many he's going to sell in the next 2 weeks. And that will tell me how many, at an average dollar per sale, how much we're going to have coming into my department. So yes, I am going to increase it, or no, I'm going to decrease output. And I love that. I've never done it. My brother taught me that. I got to give him credit, and it's just amazing. So it's just stuff like that that just blows my mind.
And I think it's important to circle back, because you were touching on this, and it was really important, is when you explain why you're picking these metrics to your managers, to your field managers, you're telling them that, hey, I'm giving you some control here. Like, this is what it is. Like, by changing these things, here's how you can control what's happening. And you want to talk about making an employee feel amazing about what they're doing, give them empowered control over making things happen and going, hey, you're being promoted into this. And so now that you're promoted, there's a few things that you have to understand, and we're going to give you ways to be directly incentivized to do better, because this is the way that your compensation works. This isn't just the salary and the company car. These are these three things that you get to control, and here's what that means.
Yeah.
And when you're training your people on that's when you get people that are really turned on to come to work, and they're going to kill it for you.
Yeah. Well, and if you got dirty books and you don't have clear numbers, what I described as an incentive program is a little tough to handle, but it gives you, a target to aim for. And to be clear, like, just so everybody knows a little bit of the evolution, I'm trying my best to move into a bonus model, and I've been doing it for a year and a half, that managers are rewarded for dollars over a certain amount of EBITDA per month. Mm-hmm. And it's very hard to track because you have to have a really sharp bookkeeping, but you also have to be able to depreciate your assets on a monthly basis. Mm-hmm. So it says, hey, if my target as an owner is 10% EBITDA per month, for every dollar over 10%, I'm going to give you 20% of it. You have put no cap on that. And by the way, I don't mean to say that in the Gen Alpha way. I don't even know what no cap means to Gen Alpha. But, I mean, you have not capped the salary of those people, and it's super powerful. So, I've been working towards that for over a year. And we're finally starting to see, okay, I can trust these numbers, but also I can make it transparent and very crystal clear and trustworthy to the managers, because, man, things happen and it's just weird. When you go back and forth on these things after promising it, people just don't trust you. And that's where performance.io has become so helpful, is it makes it stupid clear on the front line. Now I got to work on the back end to make sure that managers have it the same. But, Drake, we will table those other 2 questions, which were actually, they're not bad. Maybe I'll throw those in a post on one of our Facebook groups. Other than that, we are filming this episode on New Year's. We are speaking to you in 2024, but you will be listening to this in 2025. So we are mastering some type of quantum time travel with our episodes today, Drake. We are speaking to you from the past.
And in case you missed it, we'll have that episode on setting goals. So in case you're cramming last second for all of your New Year's planning, you can go back and listen to that episode.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that was October. Yeah, that was a great episode.
It was.
October's my favorite time of year. Love it, man.
Yeah. So go back, listen to that episode if you haven't done your New Year's resolutions and goals. That's going to be important. You don't know where you're going if you don't plan on how you're going to get there.
That's exactly right. Well, hey, Drake, appreciate you, buddy. Glad you set in on Terry's behalf. I don't think he would have been able to run through these questions as well as you and I have, but, we'll see next week when he's back. Otherwise, appreciate you guys. You contractors, you kick ass, and I appreciate you listening to another week of Beers with Contractors. I will see you next week. See you guys.
See you next year.
And that's a wrap for today's episode of Beers with Contractors. We hope you enjoyed our chat as much as we did. Before we say our final goodbyes, a friendly reminder. Beers with Contractors encourages responsible drinking. If you choose to enjoy a beverage during our time together, please do so in moderation and only if you're of legal drinking age in your country or state. Furthermore, the advice and insights shared in this podcast are for informational purposes only. Always consult with professionals and experts in your field, and be sure to follow local laws and regulations regarding licensing and permits. We're here to help, entertain, and inspire, but your safety and compliance are important. So, as you head out into the world of construction and contracting, remember to build responsibly and make decisions that stand the test of time. Thanks for joining us today. We'll catch you on the next episode of Beers with Contractors. Until then, cheers to your success.